Chag Sameach. I'm Rabbi Steve Denker from Temple Emanu in Orange Village. I and our congregation are very, very pleased to once again be part of the Tikkun Leil Shavuot, sponsored by our friends here at B'nai Jeshurun, but of course coming to you this particular Shavuot over our streaming video, whatever process we're using at the moment. And personally, as technology has changed, I've used that to go back to the story of Matan Torah and reinterpret how God, in fact, gave us the Torah. This, by the way, has absolutely nothing to do with my subject for this tikkun. But the old days, I used to say that God telephoned it to Moshe Rabbeinu, and then I decided that God faxed it to Moshe Rabbeinu. And after that, I changed to the idea that God emailed it to Moshe Rabbeinu. And now, of course, I think that God met with Moshe and all of the people of Israel, and that the lights and the flashes that the people saw at Har Sinai were, in fact, the screens of a computer that was going on Zoom. And so now we, of course, have a new interpretation of Ma'amad Har Sinai, of the revelation at Sinai, using our computers. And Cain, Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will that we continue to increase our technology from year to year. My subject for this particular tikkun is a relatively new subject for me, and I'm sharing it with you because I am, frankly, at the beginnings of my own exploration of a subject that has been part of Jewish tradition for a very, very long time, and that's the question of shadows, Shadim and Us. The question of what beings, what entities exist in the world that are beyond what we normally perceive. They could be ghosts, they could be goblins, they could be imps or spirits of any kind. Of course, this phenomena is not uniquely Jewish. Almost all major religions, and even not such major religions, have a concept and an idea of beings that exist that either help or harm us, depending on their interpretation and how one treats with them. Perhaps the most well-known of these traditions are the Yoruba traditions. These are the syncretistic religions that arise in the Caribbean and in South and Central America as a result of the joining together of European Christianity as well as the native religions, the indigenous religions that were found there. The one that we are perhaps most familiar with is called Voodoo or Voodoo, and it is, of course, the combination of French Catholic Christianity together with the native religions of Haiti, and we get this idea of orishas, of demons, beings that can either help or not help, and that literally attach to you. And in attaching to you, if they are malevolent, you need the help of someone to get rid of them. Usually that's a shaman or some kind of a priest. Interestingly enough, the Yiddish tradition, our Eastern European tradition, has this concept of and earlier on as well in Judaism, we have this concept of a dibuk, or a dibuk, as we say in Hebrew. I'll use the Yiddish for now. The dibuk literally comes from, the word itself comes from the word devek, daled beit, kuf, which is the same word we use in modern Hebrew for glue, which is to say this stuff attaches to you, it connects to you, and you may need help getting rid of it. So let's start out with this idea of shadows, Shadim and Us. And for this tikkun, since we only have a brief time together, I hope we will at least just scratch the surface and kind of differentiate between what's a shade or a dibuk and what are other creatures and part of that other world. So let's get started. The first reference, the first usage of the word shadim that we have, or one of the earliest usages, I should say, is in Devarim 23. Devarim 23, as part of the recitation of the history, the nascent history of the Hebrew people, Moshe says, it's reported, Yizbechu la shedim lo Elohei Elohim lo yuduim chadashim mikarov ba'u lo sa'arum avotechem. They sacrificed to Shadim, which are no gods, good translation, which means gods they had never known, new ones who showed up lately, who had not stirred or had not been part of the life, had not stirred the fears of our ancestors. The idea of Shadim here is not so much demons, and I'm not sure about the translation of that word here, but the idea of non-gods or new gods or gods with whom you had no experience. So what we're seeing here is that in the Chumash, in Deuteronomy, where we are getting an expression of what's called national monotheism, in other words, we recognize we have our one God and other people have their one gods as well. The shade here is not necessarily a demon. Again, I would disagree with the translation that you have on your screen. It's not necessarily a demon, but the shade here is simply another god, a foreign god. In Psalms, we see the same expression. They worshiped their idols, which became a snare for them. Vayavdu et atzavehem vayiyu lahem l'mokesh. They snared the Hebrews and took them away from loyalty to the God of Israel. Vayizbechu et v'nehem v'et benotehem la shedim. That they sacrificed their sons and daughters to these shedim. Again, on your screen translated as demons, but I'd like you to consider the possibility of understanding Shadim here as simply other or foreign gods. And of course, we know that there is, in the time of King Solomon, alav shalom, there is the problem of the sacrifices of the offering of children to Moloch. They shed innocent blood, the blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan, to the land that was polluted with blood guilt, from Psalm 106. Now, aside from Shadim, we have other expressions in the Tanakh that seem to do with forces that are outside of our own control. And from the Pesach story, from Exodus 12, Va'avar ad Hashem lingof et Mitzrayim, and God went to whack Egypt. V'ra'ah et adam al hamashkof, and saw the blood on the mashkof. Mashkof meaning a lintel, L-I-N-T-E-L, the top of the door. V'al shtei hamezuzot, on the two doorposts, which is what mezuzah really means. Ufasach, and God passed by or slinked by al hapetach, the opening. V'lo yitain hamashchit lavo el betechem lingof, and God did not allow the mashchit. And so we have this picture, this image of a mashchit, which is translated here and is well translated as the word destroyer. Bal tashchit is a mitzvah, not to unnecessarily waste anything. So the destroyer, the mashchit, is a force. And of course, the rabbis in the commentaries debate whether this mashchit is an independent force in the universe or whether this mashchit is an angel. We sometimes talk about it as the malach hamavet, the messenger or the angel of death that God has sent forth to destroy Egypt. But here, the mashchit, like the word mavet, death in Hebrew, is a mashchit, a destroyer with a capital D, as you see on your screen, but it also is like mavet, death with a capital D, and the mashchit in the biblical text is a personification of destruction in the universe. A number of the texts that talk about war or that talk about famine or social disruption in the Talmud talks about the fact that once the mashchit, the destroyer, is set forth in the universe, there is no controlling what the destroyer destroys. And of course, in this case, we see the Exodus story as sui generis, as here is a case where the destroyer does not destroy indiscriminately, but part of our rabbinic tradition warning against chaos in a society, warning against the unraveling of a society and warfare, is this idea that once the mashchit is released, there is no controlling or differentiating between what the destroyer destroys and what the destroyer does not destroy. And again, here, Exodus story is a bit of an exception to that rule. If we go forward to the Jonah story, the Jonah story in Jonah 4:10, at the end of the story, for those who are not yet familiar with it, Jonah, having reluctantly succeeded at his mission, sits down on a park bench someplace and looks out over this city of Nineveh, which against his own free will he actually helped to save. And he looks out, and the sun is strong on him. The idea of sunscreen had not yet been invented, and God wants to help him. So a kikayon, which in this text is translated as a ricinus plant. I am from Brooklyn, from the part of Brooklyn, New York, where the tree did not grow. Do not ask me what a ricinus plant is. I have no idea. But some kind of a kikayon, a gourd or a plant, or something that was large enough to give him shade, is produced by God to save Jonah, or to at least make him more comfortable. Vayiman Adonai Elohim kikayon, and God provides a kikayon, a ricinus plant, Vayal Mayal Layona Lahiyot Tzal al Rosho, to create a tzal, a shade on his head. Now, here's where I want to differentiate between the word shade as we use it in mystical, paranormal discussions in English and the way this word tzal operates in Hebrew. The word shade we use, or shadow, we usually think of in English and in Western thought as something negative, as something that's trailing us. We have that sense in some rabbinic literature, that the idea is that falling into the shade of another creature, or even falling into the shade of a tree, could be difficult and dangerous, and it'd be a place for demons. We'll see a little bit of Talmud on that in a couple of minutes. But for here, let's just focus for a moment on the word tzal, or shade, in the Bible. And regardless of the rest of the Jonah story, the word tzal here is something positive. It's something comforting. It's something physically and perhaps even spiritually comforting that God provides as a matter of rachmanut, perhaps even a sense of grace that God has for Jonah. So the word shade, while later on it takes on a negative and a negative meaning, here the word shade is something positive. And the word shade seems to carry on that way in the biblical tradition. But now I'd like you to meet a demon. This demon is known as Ben Tamalion. He shows up, he or she, I'm egalitarian, shows up in the Talmud and in the Midrashim, in some of the mystical literature. The Ben Tamalion is a demon that you may or may not be familiar with. I know that he or she has been seen some places around the Cleveland area, but don't know where that demon is at the moment. And you have the Talmud text there too, but the translation that you have here, unfortunately, is not differentiating between what's in the words that are translated from the Talmud and the fill-in to make the Talmud readable. That's because I'm kind of new at this PowerPoint thing. But this is from the translation and the text that is available on Sefaria if you wish to look it up yourself. So we have a story of Shimon Bar Yochai, who is Ben Yochai rather, who is going to Rome to petition the Roman Empire to relax some of the decrees that have been set against the Jewish people. I'm not going to give the history lesson now. You can learn that at another time. As Ben Yochai is headed to Rome, Ben Tamalion comes upon them and offers to accompany them. Now, this particular spirit, Ben Tamalion, is a spirit that is helpful to people, but he's a bit of a trickster and can sometimes play games with you. The European Jews, particularly the French Jews, associated Ben Tamalion with what are called in English literature brownies, these imps that are around and are generally helpful and friendly, not malevolent, but kind of jokesters and tricksters. But that's a later interpretation. So Ben Yochai is on his way, and he's on his way, and Ben Tamalion comes and meets his group and says, do you want me to come with you? The implication is, do you want to come with me to come with you and help? The demon went before them, and so as they approach Rome, the demon goes out ahead and possesses the Caesar's daughter, possesses the ruler's daughter. Doesn't tell us exactly what happened. And so by the time Ben Yochai and his group get there, the daughter is pretty sick or possessed of demons. The Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai arrived there at the emperor's palace, the Caesar's palace, and he said, and we have it in the text, Amar ben Tamalion tzei, ben Tamalion tzei, which is the command form of the word get out. And so we have Ben Yochai now is conducting literally an exorcism in the Talmud. And once Ben Shimon called to him, Ben Tamalion emerged and left the emperor's daughter, and she was cured from whatever disease she had. And then the story goes on. When the emperor saw that the rabbi had cured his daughter, he said, ask for any reward that you want. They took him up to his treasury, and the king's treasury. And in the king's treasury or archives, they find the decrees against the Jewish people, and they said, this is what we want. They tore them up and thereby nullified the decrees. And so we have right there in the Gemara the idea that this demon, positive demon, helpful demon, assists the delegation from Judea going to Rome, assists them, and helps annul the decrees by going through this act of leaving the emperor's daughter, so that the reward is the decrees against the Jews are annulled or at least modified. We don't know about the historicity of this story, but it's a good example of a demon or a spirit that is helpful. And now if we go to Pesachim 111a, and by the way, the little parenthesis means which slide it's on. These are contiguous texts. We just didn't want to get them all on one slide. We couldn't get them all on one slide. All right, so now we're talking about demons themselves. Earlier in the sugya, there are some identification of which particular demon this might be. Not important for our discussion now, but it's just a demon. And now we get a little bit of an idea of the mechanics of demons. The Gemara elaborates, with regard to one who relieves himself, that is, uses the washroom, between a palm tree and a wall, we said that he places himself in danger only when there are not 4 cubits of space between the two objects. Now, Daled Amot, 4 cubits, is the halachic definition of your personal space. You own the space that is 4 cubits around you in all directions, particularly interesting in light of our current social distancing, although 4 cubits is not far enough. Only when there are not 4 cubits. Why? But if there's more than 4 cubits, we don't have a problem with your walking between a palm tree and a wall or using that as a washroom. Why? Because more than 4 cubits, the demon has a possibility of passing through without bothering you. But if you're blocking a space that's less than 4 cubits wide, the demon doesn't have room to get through. So we have this kind of sense of the spatial realities of demons. Furthermore, when there are not 4 cubits, we said it's only a problem when the demons have no other route. And so we now know that a demon needs 4 cubits to get by, but if you're not allowing a space wide enough for 4 cubits, by the way, a cubit is about 18 inches from your thumb to your elbow, then it's okay still, as long as the demon can go in a different direction, can go around the other way. However, if they have another route, no problem. But with regard to one who passes between 2 palm trees, we said that he is in danger only if a public domain does not cross between them. In other words, that the demon can use the public domain, a sidewalk, a street, a road, just like the rest of us, and there needs to be a public domain so that the demons and you do not have to interact. I will leave it to the medical community to decide whether this is important with regard to current social distancing. However, if a public domain crosses between them, we have no problem, as demons are not permitted to cause harm in a public space. And so now another thing we've learned about demons is that in a public space, in the Rishus Harabim, they cannot cause a problem or they cannot cause any damage. Maybe that's why when you arrange a date on a dating app, it's advisable to meet that person in a public space before you meet them in a private space, because there is some safety in being out in public. Apparently, that principle applies with demons as well. Another one that's important in this particular Shavuot, from Chulin 107b, Rabbi Abaya says the reason for washing, that is washing in the morning, is not on account of the food specifically. Rather, it is due to an evil spirit named Shivta, not related to the Hindu god so far as I know, who contaminates hands that have not been washed in the morning. As long as one washes his hands in the morning, perhaps he need not wash them again to feed another person. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the Talmud. This is only one of the places where it talks about hand washing, the Jewish tradition of hand washing, which some say has a benefit, a medical benefit. And finally, we'll conclude this lesson with the line from Leviticus 6:6, which on the face of it seems to have absolutely nothing to do with demons. As part of the instructions for the tabernacle, we are commanded with regard to the altar, Eish tamid tukad al ha-mizbeach lo tichber. A perpetual fire, an Eish tamid, shall be kept burning on the altar, and it shall not be allowed to go out. Eish tamid, of course, is, some of us relate that to Ner Tamid, light that we have going on. But the Kohanim is supposed to keep that altar burning all of the time. And on the face of it, it seems to have nothing to do with what's called in the Gemara the Sitra Achra. The Gemara and the mystical literature, Sitra Achra literally is Aramaic for the other side. Whether that led to the development of certain television programs, I cannot say, but the Sitra Achra is the other side. And there is a statement in the Zohar that's picked up in other mystical texts as well, that the point of there being an Eish Tamid, that there being a fire continuously on the altar, is that the altar fire, Michalesh, Sitra Achra, that the altar fire actually weakens the other side, and if you will, prevents all of these spirits and things in the other side that are not far away, but that are right near to us, prevents them from coming, if you will, crashing in. And that the altar fire in the ancient temple and in the tabernacle was the one that prevented and kept at bay the evil from the Sitra Achra, the evil that can come to us from that other world that exists not far away, but invisibly right near us. And so we conclude with the idea that what replaces the altar, the Mizbeach for us? Of course, the altar is replaced in the most general terms by our mitzvot. And so how do we keep ourselves safe from demons? In this modern world, we wash our hands, we socially distance, giving everybody at least 4 amot, daled amot, 4 cubits, if not more, and we keep our mitzvot going under all circumstances to keep those evil forces of the universe at bay. I wish each and every one of you a Chag Sameach. Stay safe and healthy. We look forward to seeing you in person next year.